Hi, Nick Doganor, State Law. We safeguard your professional license so you can get back to business. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. If you've watched any of my YouTube videos or read any of the blogs on my website, northstatelawfirm.com, you'll typically see videos and blogs related to information regarding licensed professionals and kind of tips and things like that. Kind of help out and inform people on things that boards might look out for, or different processes with different boards or agencies, kind of things like that, like explanational type of videos. Today we're going to do one called "What Do Lawyers Do?" So a lot of people might assume lawyers do X, Y, or Z, or they might do one, two, three. And some of those assumptions may be correct. Some of them might be wrong. So we're going to clarify a couple little things. But the first thing I really want to talk to about is the perception of lawyers and how lawyers are viewed by society, or at least by some in society. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of, for example, lawyer jokes. I don't know if that's still a thing, but when I was a younger guy, lawyer jokes were very, very big. For example, what do you call a million lawyers buried at the bottom of the sea? A good start. So that's kind of a thing. There's a bunch of other lawyer jokes out there. Google it, and you'll get a good laugh out of all that stuff. But so where does this perception come from? A lot of people will come up with the phrase, well, that guy's an ambulance chaser, referring to somebody that might do personal injury or something along those lines. They're chasing the ambulance to find the person that's been harmed, trying to get them as a client and things like that. That's a negative perception as well. There's negative perceptions, and as a former criminal defense attorney, I find this to really be unfair. But there's a negative perception against criminal defense attorneys, which again I find to be incredibly unfair. It's a important part of the judicial system, but there's negative perceptions there as well. So lawyers at the end of the day, to answer the crux of the question, what do lawyers do? Just like any other profession, we're just trying to help people, right? If you are an engineer, for example, or general contractor, electrician, a doctor, a nurse, I can go on, but you get the point. If you're a licensed professional, your number one needs to be what's in the best interest of my client, what's in the best interest of my customer, my patient, things like that. If you don't put your customers first, your clients first, your patients first, then your services are likely not going to be at a high level as they should. And it's the same with products as well. And we're all consumers. We've all had a bunch of products where over the course of our lives, we're like, man, I paid XYZ and that product sucks. They did a really bad job with that product. I like the 2019 version of this truck versus this brand new truck that I just bought. The darn fly gasket. I got that one wrong, but anyways, you get the point. Broke and all that stuff. So that's an example of product not being up to snuff and people putting the money over the product. And as licensed service professionals or licensed professionals that provide services to people, we got to remember to put the clients first, right? And then everything else will kind of fall in line and go from there. If you don't do that, obviously you're going to have some problems, and that's where you get to the point where complaints can happen. You know, I've seen this in a lot of different professions, including with attorneys, and where somebody is say, all right, well, I'll get back to this person. And 2, 3 weeks going down the line, it slips through the cracks, and the person's been trying to get up with you, and that can lead to a complaint. And that's something easily avoided. That happens a lot with not only attorneys, but with general contractors, as well as electricians, plumbers, people's in the trades. So it is not just one profession. It can happen to a lot of them. And that goes back to what I was talking about a little bit ago, is the customer service aspect of it, right? So going back to a little bit of what lawyers do and the perception of lawyers, we talked about the negative perception, and we'll talk about a little bit about the positive perception of lawyers, especially in popular culture. If you're a little bit younger, you might not get a couple of these references, but Google's your friend, so check them out. My Cousin Vinny, great movie, early '90s, Joe Pesci, Marissa Tomei. Fantastic movie. It's about a lawyer that is from the New York, New Jersey area. His cousin gets in trouble in Alabama, is wrongfully accused of a gas station robbery that turned into a homicide. Him and his buddy get thrown in jail in Alabama, very rural Alabama. So he calls up his cousin Vinny. Vinny comes down. Vinny is unlicensed though, and Vinny is a very good attorney, very good at spotting a lot of BS, and very good with his mouth. And he's very good on his feet. Does a great job in the trial. There's some procedural issues that he runs into a good bit, but at the end of the day, he gets the job done. And they never find out the fact that he was not licensed in not only Alabama but any other state. So that's a great one. Very positive view of lawyers in that particular movie. Lawyers, Guns, and Money is kind of a funny, kind of humorous type take on the importance of attorneys. I believe that's a Warren Zevon song back from the 70s, 80s, something like that. It's been covered a number of times as well. So check that one out if you haven't heard that one before. That's a good take on the importance of lawyers. If you need somebody when you're in trouble, you need to call a lawyer. So that one's a good one. To Kill a Mockingbird is a great book, adapted into a fantastic movie as well. That one goes back, even predates me, and goes back into the black and white days as well. So that one's a great one. Again, a great representation of lawyers in popular culture with To Kill a Mockingbird. A Time to Kill was another one based on a John Grisham movie. Matthew McConaughey was the star of that one, did a fantastic job. That's based in Mississippi as well. And then I'm trying to think of some other ones. There was another Matthew McConaughey movie, The Lincoln Lawyer. That's an interesting adaptation or interpretation of what a lawyer does, and I think that could be pretty accurate depending on the attorney and where they're practicing and things like that. But that's a good one as well. And so we see throughout popular culture through a number of decades that popular culture seems to, for the most part, favor lawyers. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I think it's right. I'm biased, obviously, but at least it kind of like swings the pendulum a little bit from what some in society view lawyers that they do. And some of that perception might be actually negative and a little bit unfair. We might get a little bit of a swing the other way with some of these references I made in popular culture, where attorneys are getting a little bit too much of a good feeling towards the public, but things typically even out over the years. So I think you also have to look at going back to the question of what lawyers do. You know, there are a lot of different areas of law, right? So a lot of the examples that I was talking about, those are litigators. Those are people that are going to be in court. They're going to try cases. They're going to have hearings. They're going to get elbows deep in cases and litigation, and presenting evidence, gathering evidence, kind of things like that. But that's a smaller subsect overall, in my opinion, at least, of the type of areas of law that attorneys do. There's a lot of transactional work that attorneys do. You got contracts, you've got real estate, you've got estate planning. You'll have, and this would go in with like, business documentation, business formations, a lot of different things like that. That's going to be, in my opinion, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but in my opinion, that's going to be probably a little bit more common as far as the type of work that attorneys do than somebody that would be a litigator. Or the fancy term nowadays for people that do litigation is, I'm a trial attorney. Well, it's like, okay, that makes them sound a little bit more fierce, I guess. It's kind of like this person is a bulldog. Okay, I guess they bark a lot. There's a lot of different things that lawyers do. And speaking of that, some lawyers will have what's called a general practice, right? And general practice is anybody coming off the street, hey, we'll have a consultation. It's a little bit of old school way of doing stuff. And not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because there isn't. But especially when folks are just starting out, they'll do what's called hang their shingle. Again, another old timey phrase, but it's basically like set up shop. And they'll take whomever comes in the door, figure out their legal problem, whether they need a contract drafted, a business form, or if they got a traffic ticket or something worse, they'll handle it. And then usually what people will do is they'll trim down their practice area based off of that. and typically get into a niche. And the only negative about doing a general practice is you're not going to be a master of one specific niche. That's typically not going to happen. There's always exceptions to everything, but in my experience, having done numbers of areas of law over the years before we got into our niche area at North State Law, it is very difficult to really focus enough on the nuts and bolts of every single area of law when you're taking and you're doing like 10 different things. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing criminal defense, you're doing personal injury, you're doing business formation, then you're doing business disputes, and then you're doing uh, contract formations, and then you're doing real estate, and then you do estate planning, and then you're doing, you know, estate administration stuff. It can be a bunch, and it's a lot to keep track of. We do continuing legal education requirements every year, and so you have a number of hours that you have to hit. They just changed them this past year, so I don't remember off the top of my head how many that we have to get every 2 years now because it changed to them, but it's substantial. So there's a lot to keep up with, and then you got to keep up with case law. CLE usually helps out with that. We have a really good CLE program in North Carolina, depending on where you're at in the state. But even then, there's going to be things that, cases that pop up that might not be on a CLE that's offered, and you got to keep up with that. So as things progress, lawyers typically will get into a niche. So, like with my firm, all we do is administrative law, which is professional license defense, is under that umbrella, right? So administrative law is, for lack of a better phrasing, and it's probably more, I could probably come up with a better definition, but it's dealing with administrative authorities within government, okay? And professional license defense, like I said, follows that umbrella. That's what we do. We deal with protecting individuals that have a complaint filed against their licensed with a government agency or a licensing board, or they're trying to get their license and they're being denied, or if somebody owns a specific business and they need a license to run that business, that's obviously falls under that administrative law umbrella as well. But that's all that we do. We help professionals operate their businesses when they need a license, and that's all that we're going to continue to do. So the other thing that I want to bring up is it makes a difference what a lawyer does, and that goes back to the general practice example. If you have somebody that is doing 5, 6, 7, 8 things, or even doing 3 things that are complicated, they might not have the nuance in this particular area of law, professional license defense, that somebody like our firm has, where we only do one thing. And that really matters because you have somebody that has done it for years. They know the people that are involved with these boards and these agencies, the attorneys on the other side. They know what the process is. They know what potential outcomes might be and how to avoid potential negative outcomes and how to, position yourself to potentially get a better outcome. So those things are all really important. So what do lawyers really do? A number of things. But what you really want to do is find somebody that does a small, specific area of law that will focus and help you on your problem and get that problem resolved, and hopefully resolved in the best manner possible. So if you have any questions about this or anything else related to your professional license, please give us a call at 919-521-8810. You can call or text that number for a free 15-minute discovery call. You can also check out the blogs on my website, northstatelawfirm.com, and all the other videos on the YouTube channel, North State Law's YouTube channel. And I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and thank you so much for attending this YouTube video. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.